All right, so one of the main ways to have control of the flow of your application is with if statements. And if statements are in just about every programming language. If they're not, then there's most likely something similar. So the format of an if statement is very simple. We just say if, and then in here we can put either a value or an expression. So I'm just going to put true in this one. And then if that passes, so if it's true, then whatever I put in here will run. I'm just going to say this is true. If I save that, you'll see that that runs. Now, if I were to copy this down and change this to, let's say, false, and then we'll say this is not true. If I save that, that's not, this block of code right here, line 6, is not going to run because this expression that I passed in is false. All right, now we can also evaluate expressions with operators like equals or less than. So I actually have a chart right here. So we can test if something is equal to with both double and triple equal signs, or not equal to, greater than, less than, and also greater than and or equal to, or less than or equal to. So just to give you a quick example, and let's actually create a couple variables here. We'll say x equals 10, and let's do y equals 5, and we'll say if x is greater than y, then let's just do a console log, throw some backticks in here, and we can say x is greater than y. Save that, and we get 10 is greater than 5. If I want to use an equal sign or triple equals, whatever, not quadruple equals, that's not a thing. And then here we'll say x is equal to y. If I save that, this block of code isn't going to run because this is false, right? If I change y to 10 and I save, then that will run. Now this one's not going to run because 10 is not greater than 10. If I were to use greater than or equals, that will run. Okay, so we could say is greater than or equal to, save that, we get 10 is greater than or equal to 10. Now as far as if else goes, if I change y back to 5, this right here, this block of code is not going to run, but we might want something to happen if this is false. So if this is true, this line will run. Then we can add an else if we want and say, we'll just copy this, and I'll say is not equal to y. So if I save that, now we're going to get 10 is not equal to 5. So the else is going to run because this expression is false. Now, we talked a little bit about scope. We talked quite a bit about scope in the last section, but I just wanted to remind you that blocks like if statements have their own scope. So if I put, it doesn't really matter what I put in here. I'll just say if x is not equal to y. And then I just want to show you in here, if I were to create a variable like, let's do z, and set that to 20, and let's say console log, and let's see, x, I'll just say, I don't know, we'll just say z is 20. It doesn't really matter. What I want to show you here, if I save that, we get 20 is 20. But if I were to try to access that z variable, I can't do that. Z is not defined. And that's because I use const. If I use let here to define z, I get the same thing. If I use var, it actually works because var is not block level scoped. It's function scoped. Like you can't use, if I were to say var z in a function, I can't use it outside of that in the global scope. But with other blocks like loops and if statements, it's not scoped. Okay, so and it's not a good thing that this is not scoped, because then someone might want to access that z variable somewhere else and they'll be able to. So that's why let and const were actually created, was to keep block level scoping. Now the next thing I want to show you is some shorthands that we could use. I don't really do this and recommend it, but it is possible. So let's take this right here, this if statement, and let's just say shorthand if. So we'll paste that in, and I'm not talking about the ternary operator, we'll get to that later, but I can actually get rid of the curly braces here. So that is perfectly valid JavaScript. If I save that, we get 10 is greater than or equal to 5. All right, and then if I wanted to use an else, I could, after the semicolon, do else, and without parentheses, without curly braces, we'll say, I don't know, it doesn't matter, we'll say this is false. And save that, and if I change, let's say y to 50, and save that, you can see this is false. Now, this looks cluttered to me. I don't like it. I would use parentheses, but everyone has their own preference. But I just want to show you that if you have multiple lines, like right here, we just had a console log, if this was true, you can do this with multiple lines by using a comma. So let's say I also want to log, let's say console.log, this is true. And if I save that, you'll see I'm not getting any errors. If I change this y back to 5 and I save, it's going to run both this line right here and this line right here. It's true. This is true. So you can do this, but I really don't like the syntax and wouldn't suggest it. All right, so that's it for just the basics of if statements. In the next video, I want to get into else if as well as nesting.